Hey guys, it's a beautiful day. We're at the pier, Redondo Beach, checking out the Cruiser E. Perfect place to check this bike out because cruisers are all about having fun, being relaxed. We've got the waves in the background, some wildlife, birds and stuff. Been riding around on the paved concrete sidewalk and it's pretty smooth here, and that's nice because this bike doesn't really have any suspension. Instead, you're relying on these CST Classic Zeppelin tires. They're 28, it's the diameter, by 2, and that's sort of the width right there. So a little bit fatter than a city tire, road tire. It's going to give you some cushion, and it definitely feels nice. It's got a decent PSI spread, so you could lower the tire pressure a little bit to give you some comfort. There's also this big faux leather saddle from Velo with some springs built in, so there's a little bit of cushion, some bounce. I was looking at that seat post. I'm looking at it pretty close because sometimes you can get a suspension seat post, so it's got some cushion built in with like an elastomer or a pivot section. But this is 30 millimeters in diameter, so that's kind of interesting. I haven't seen 30 before. I've seen 30.9, I've seen 27.2, 31.6, but 30 is a bit rare. It's different. The other thing that's different about this bike is the stem, the valve stem there for the inner tube, it's Dunlop, and that's sort of a European standard. That's kind of interesting. So I'm actually visiting the Bulls offices here in Southern California, and I asked that question. I was like, why Dunlop? And they were like, we're going to change that. It should be Presta, but I'm reporting on what I see here. It's late 2017. This is a 2018 model year bike. And again, I just think it's beautiful. But coming back to the comfort, we've got these matching faux leather grips. They're padded, stitched, brown, tying with the tires, with the saddle very nicely. Swept back bar, a little bit of a rise going on, and this stem can actually go up or down a little bit. So a lot of times you'll see aggressive mountain bikes, they have like just a solid stem that's forward, that's bolted right on. Well, this one can go up and down a little bit. It's a bit narrower, but the thing is, the headset here appears to be 1 1/8 inches, and it does say cartridge system, so perhaps it's sealed, which is going to be a little bit nicer. So I just think I'm pointing that out. It's a bit technical, but it's an interesting combination of parts here that I'm seeing, including these Magura hydraulic rim brakes. 4-finger levers, so you can really grab on, get a hold of those. They've got tool-free adjustability, so you can bring them in a little bit. Maybe you have smaller hands, and it's hard to like reach way out here and have the brake stop. So by adjusting those, they can stop a little bit closer. Rim brakes are neat because they give you a great mechanical advantage by grabbing the outside of the rim versus like a disc brake or something. However, they can get a bit more dirty and rub grit into your rims. Also, on some applications, if you're dealing with a really wet environment like mountain biking, that's why they use the disc brakes in the center. So these are neat. These are really high quality, great for the city, and they keep the center, that hub area, clean, which is important because we have an internally geared hub back here. This is the Inter 7. This is a Nexus product. You can see the shifter up here. It's a grip shifter, 7 speeds, Shimano Nexus branding right there. Keeps the cockpit clean. You don't have to worry about thinking about triggers and stuff. You just look in this little window and say minus or plus, and you can actually shift at standstill. So if you're someone who's been riding in a higher gear, going a little bit faster, and you have to make an abrupt stop, it's going to be a lot easier to shift down to a lower gear before you start pedaling again, and this product lets you do that. 7 gears is fine for getting around town. You can see back here there's a single sprocket, so the chain doesn't have to go up or down, and there's no derailleur hanging down. It's pretty clean. If this bike tips or something, it's a little bit more durable. And again, the rim brakes just clean up that hub area. Up here we have a 38 tooth chainring, more traditionally sized chainring, and that's unique for a Bosch powered electric bike because a lot of times they have a smaller sprocket that spins 2.5 revolutions for every crank revolution. Okay, and it's kind of like a gearbox thing. The smaller sprockets are used on their I guess it's Performance Line and Performance Line CX and some of the old Active motors. The new Active Line Plus that we're looking at, it's like one step up from Active. It gives you 50 Newton meters of peak torque. It's an interesting motor. The casing is smaller, and they've actually got it paint matched, so it's got a plastic casing on this glossy, almost metallic white, really beautiful frame. It does come in 3 sizes, by the way, so we're looking at the medium here, but it comes in 45 centimeter, 50 centimeter, and 55 centimeters, so you can get a good fit, and that was going to influence your reach and standover height a little bit. But the point I was making is that this motor is a bit more compact. The Active Line isn't quite as zippy. It's not designed to be like a mountain biking motor that's carrying you up these big hills. It's meant to be smooth and enjoyable, but being the Plus model, it's a little bit stepped up, okay? So it is a little bit more sporty, but you're still getting a city feel, and you get that traditional size chain ring. And it actually allows you to pedal backwards. So that's interesting. When I was riding this before, see the chain actually cycling backwards? I'm not used to seeing that. A lot of the center drive motors from Bosch and Yamaha and Shimano, the cranks spin and they're kind of free and the chain doesn't move. I guess for me, it's interesting to see the chain moving on this one. It makes servicing maybe a little bit easier if we had a cassette. You can see that there's a clear plastic slap guard sticker there. I love the cover. It's also plastic, paint matched with that pearlescent white. And coming back to the gearbox thing, there's not as much friction like internally with the sprocket having to spin at a different ratio. So that's just something I think about, because if you're pedaling this bike completely unpowered, turned it off, you don't get as much friction. But what I have noticed is that when I was pedaling around and I'm getting assistance and the assistance stops, there's a little bit of a clunk and there's almost like a pull happening because of that more standard chain ring. It's something I'm trying to get used to. I don't know if it's because of the internally geared hub or it's just something that's going to happen with the Active and Active Plus motors. There's just a little bit there. We'll see it when we ride later. 170 millimeter Lasco alloy cranks, Welgo pedals. These are the cage style. They're not my favorite. They can get bent up a little bit, and if you slip off, it'll scratch your shin, but at least it gives you more grip than some of the rubber ones. You can see where this bike's actually been probably laid down on its side accidentally, and it makes for really sharp edges. So just be careful with those pedals if you get this bike. I love that you've got protection up here with steel fenders, front and rear. Again, paint matched, just like the rack. The rack is aluminum. Steel fenders are a mixed bag in my opinion, because you know, metal is a little bit more durable and tends to be quieter than plastic. Plastic can be very durable too. You can bang it all around and stuff, whereas metal can get bent. And steel versus aluminum, you can get some rust. So we're here by the ocean, and if this gets some scratches on it over time, it could start to, you know, the paint and stuff starts to rust and it just doesn't look as good. The fork is also steel, and notice how it's raked out to the front, so it brings the wheel forward. It spreads out the wheelbase. It gives you a little bit more stability. So the combination of fatter tires that give you cushion, they also give you more traction and that stability with that raked out fork. So it's steel. Steel tends to be vibration dampening when used in a fork application like this. It tends to be very sturdy. Yep, that's kind of those are my takeaways from that. 36 spokes, 14 gauge up front, 13 gauge in the rear. The lower the number, the thicker the spoke. So you've got a little bit of extra support back here for the added weight that might be on this rack, or for just a larger rider. And just to handle that, you know, the different hub there, a little bit more power. People's weight tends to be distributed towards the rear on bicycles like this, more of an upright. You can even see just, yeah, I mean, imagine someone sitting up here, most of the weight's towards the back. Okay, so coming back to this rack, it doesn't say the max weight rating. I didn't see that anywhere when I was close up earlier, but I'm guessing about 55 pounds, 25 kilograms. It does have a spring latch built in, which is really nice for, you know, quick accessories or things you want to take with you. And it's from Carrymore with this iRack compatibility. So there's these holes and you can click different accessories on it. I haven't seen as many of those accessories in the United States. That seems to be more of a European thing. But I love that they've got an integrated Fouchon light in the rear, and that it's positioned out of the way of the battery and any panniers or trunk bags that you might have. So that runs right off this battery. That's the PowerPack 500 from Bosch. This is the rack design versus a mid-frame design. Putting weight up high and towards the rear does change the balance of the bike. It's not ideal. However, they wanted to free the frame up right here to make for easy step through. So if you're someone who has some knee or hip issues, you can easily get over this bike and you can stand there comfortably and confidently. And you can also lower that saddle, you know, pretty low. They've positioned the rack and the battery far enough back that you can kind of get the seat down. It doesn't quite fit perfectly, but you can get it pretty low. So those are the things I would be thinking about. I've done all the measurements for this frame. Again, it's the medium 50 centimeter frame back at the site, so you could think about standover height and everything. It's best if you can try this at a dealer, and Bulls has been in the United States now for a few years, and they're expanding their dealers. Go in and test ride this thing and then make a decision about the frame size. The 28-inch wheels, they're gonna give you some efficiency, but they also raise the frame a little bit. So see, if they were 26-inch wheels, it would be a bit lower. So that's, I don't know, it's a trade-off. It's gonna be efficient, it's nice. But again, the standover height is just something to think about. And I noticed that they've got eyelets here on the rack, or rather the fork for maybe a front rack or something, but these are the additional eyelets. They're meant for the fender, so I don't quite understand what those are for. There's a single eyelet here on the down tube. If they'd had two, it might have been a bottle cage, boss, but there's not enough room here really for a bottle cage, so I don't know what that is. Please chime in if you know. And then back here we've got some more eyelets, but the rack's already there. You don't need them for a rack. So the fenders are already attached. Everything's kind of done for you. I would call this feature complete. And if we get to the front of the bike, this is another Fouchon light. It's just a plastic housing, but it looks nice in that silver. It's more of a B scene light. It wasn't super bright. I was doing it in the parking garage earlier. You know, good enough. So coming back to weight, the weight on this bike is about 56 pounds, which isn't bad considering the steel fenders and everything like that. It saves some weight not having a suspension fork. And again, the tires, the grips, the angle of the stem and everything, and the saddle really give you some comfort. But this motor, you know, compared to the Performance Line motors, which weigh about 8.8 pounds, 7.05 pounds. So, you know, it's significantly lighter, almost 2 pounds, and that's the Active Line Plus again. And then the battery pack up here, it's 6 pounds when you take it off versus about 5.8. So the rack-mounted batteries seem to be a little bit heavier. I might just slide this thing off. I do have the keys. I love that you can charge the battery on or off the bike. Here we go, just insert this, twist. There's a handle built into the bottom. So see, I'm pulling it out. It's got a little LED charge level indicator built into the side, so you can tell how full it is if you're storing it away from the bike. 36 volts, 13.4 amp hours. So yeah, that's the Bosch Power Pack 500. And I was talking about weight distribution earlier. You know, when you're riding this bike, there is a little bit of frame flex just as a result of positioning some of that weight towards the back. There we go, locked it up. And you can feel that by, you know, if you shake the handlebars, there's a little bit of crack the whip feeling in the back. I think Bulls has done the best they can by having both a top tube and a down tube with these reinforcement points. But they're, you know, again, it's one of the trade-offs. If you reinforce it even more, then you end up with a 60-pound bike instead of a 56-pound bike. So that's something to kind of think about. The key works for the battery, but it also works for this cool frame lock. And actually, I'm putting the key on the wrong side. This is from AXA. It's called the Victory. So I love that they use the same key. You put this in, twist it, and then you have to use your other hand to push this lever here and see how it slides through and blocks the spokes, so no one could run off with your bike. They'd have to physically lift it up or something. And if you have there are certain cable or chain locks that plug into this other hole, so you can lock that to a post. So it's a really neat system. I like it. And again, it's nice that you don't have to have additional keys. Other things I noticed about this bike is that the cables are pretty well routed, but they do stand out a little bit because they're black and the frame is white. I believe it only comes in one color. They're pretty well kept out of the way, though. Hopefully not going to get too kicked, and they're internally routed over on the left side of the bike. And then down here at the back, we have an adjustable length heavy kickstand. I like this one because you can actually spin it and adjust it without a tool and raise or lower. Maybe you're parking on a hill near the beach and the bike's having trouble staying up. That kickstand is going to be adjustable and give you some help. The front wheel has quick release. It's 9mm skewer. On the rear, I believe this is 10mm axle with nuts, so it might take a little bit more effort to change a flat or something, but these hydraulic rim brakes are really cool. They have this silver lever, and when you pull it, they loosen it up so you can get the wheel off really easily and quickly. So these are great. Again, Maguro makes good stuff. I believe this is HS22. Yeah, there we go. Very nice. And then a final point about the tires is that they've got this reflective sidewall stripe. So we were talking about the front and rear integrated lights. The fact that this frame is white and reflective, kind of reflective, a little bit of metallic going on, and then the reflective tires means that hopefully cars are going to see you and you're you're gonna be a little bit safer when you're riding around the neighborhood or whatever. I would consider this a neighborhood or a cruiser bike, but you should get fantastic range. With that Power Pack 500, Bosch estimates like 37 up to 119 miles. It all depends on what level of assist you're using. The lowest level of assist on this bike is you barely feel it. I mean, it's just really kind of makes up for the extra weight of the bike. Nice to have. You notice when you're climbing and you turn it off, but it's not quite as satisfying as the higher levels. So I tend to be riding in like sport or turbo, and I think we'll get into that in a second. But with a larger battery pack, you also want to be able to charge it a bit quicker. And I like that Bull's opted for the full-size Bosch Charger that offers 4 amps of power output. Weighs about 1.7 pounds, so you can put it in a bag and, you know, hang it off over the saddle or maybe in a pannier or something like that. Pretty nice. Nice to have this thing. Bosch also has a 2 amp charger. It's a little bit smaller, but it's, you know, again, I like to be able to charge fast. Expect a full charge to take 4.5 hours if you're completely dry. So then we come up to the cockpit here. This is the Bosch Purion display panel. It's interesting compared to the Bosch Intuvia, which is a bit bigger and it has like an active USB port to charge your phone or whatever, and that one's removable. This one's just meant to be small. It's kind of cute. It stays out of the way. It's not removable, so it could take a little bit more damage if you're leaving it outside all day or if you're parking at a crowded rack and someone scrapes it. It still, you know, allows you to do many of the most important adjustments, but it doesn't give you quite as much feedback about like average speed, max speed, or a clock, which the Intuvia gives. So I'm going to jump into that. There's a power button on top. Tap that. Comes on very quickly. It's a monochrome. It's backlit. There's like a faint blue glow that we can't see because it's so bright right now. Got speed in miles per hour at the top. You can change that to kilometers per hour by holding minus and tapping power. We've got assist level. Right now it's just an off, bicycle mode. If I press plus, we go to eco, tour, sport, or turbo. And turbo gives you the most power, okay? So up to about 50 Newton meters of torque. Okay, that's pretty good. For comparison, the performance line mode, and that's like the first one that I saw here in the US, that's kind of the standard, it gives you up to 63 Newton meters of torque. So you're going to be spending that energy more efficiently. The motor's lighter. It doesn't give you quite as much power on each level of assist, but for an application like this, that makes a lot of sense. And then at the bottom, we have a battery indicator. It's got 5 ticks, so each tick is a 20% increment. And then there's a walk mode down here, this button. So if we press walk and then hold plus, the motor actually kicks on and pushes the bike, which is really nice because, you know, you can imagine if we're climbing the hill back to get home or whatever, pushing the bike. If you saw a friend, maybe you wanted to walk it or eat a craft fair, or maybe you've got a bunch of groceries and you don't feel comfortable riding it, pushing it's not a lot of fun. So I like that they have walk mode and that it's active. It's very simple to use. And then some of the other readouts on this menu you can access by holding the minus button. So we can see trip distance, 1 mile. Total distance, that's the odometer, 1 mile. And if we hold it again, it says range. And range is really cool. So depending on the level of assist you choose, it dynamically looks at how full the battery pack is, and it gives you some guess of like, well, you know, we think you can go about 41 miles in turbo mode, okay? And that's so cool to me because it's dynamic. Like, it's based on me. I weigh 135 pounds. I'm a pretty efficient rider. We've been on these nice smooth paths. 40 miles, that's great. You know, that's even higher than the Bosch website estimated at like 37. And then if we go down to eco mode, that's the lowest, it says 95 miles. So, you know, again, very capable system, excellent battery. Bosch has, you know, a 2-year comprehensive warranty that they offer on their products. I haven't heard many shops even say they've had to do a lot of service. Kind of just works. Someday you might have to replace the battery pack if it's been several years and you've used it a lot. But it's just really, really well done. Definitely one of the leaders in the space. So coming back to that Active Line Plus motor, one of the other things that I've noticed about it is it cuts out on the RPM a little bit earlier than the Performance and the Performance CX. So it supports you up to 105 RPM, whereas those mountain motors and the performance motors, they go up to 120. So that's one of the trade-offs again. So you save a little bit of weight, you don't get quite as many Newton meters of torque, you don't get quite as high of RPM support, but it might be a little bit cheaper. And this bike is $32.99. So yeah, it's a little bit more affordable for like a big name brand bike with all those extra features and stuff. then I think that's, you know, a pretty good overview. I might hop on this now and go for a little ride. So this is my friend Ricky. Been hanging out, exploring this area together, and he's gonna hop on the bike and just pedal around. Do you want to put it up in turbo mode? So press the plus turbo. There we go. Yes. Perfect. This will be nice just to see what it looks like third person. Just super quiet. That's the other thing. I think the Active Line motors might be a little bit quieter than performance. I've definitely experienced higher volume from the motors in the higher RPM range and the highest assist levels. And the thing is, this doesn't have the gearbox spinning the sprocket 2.5 revolutions for every crank arm revolution. So it's probably a little bit quieter. Thanks, man. You're looking good.
Yeah, I like riding this bike, man.
Have fun. Cool. You ring the bell? Fun. Okay, guys, we're in the parking garage. It's still pretty light, but this is a good chance to show how the lights work. So you can see a little bit of a faint glow on the display panel now, and if we hold plus, there we go. We got the little light icon, so let's check those out. Nice. Again, not super bright. It seems like a bit of a cheaper headlight. And then the rear, it's got one LED, and it's mostly a reflector. But again, I like that it stays mostly out of the way. Stow that kickstand, just take a little ride. Going over some speed bumps in the garage here, and you know, it feels pretty good with that, like the sprung saddle kind of giving me a little bit of extra comfort. And then if I'm shining it out there, you can see the light on the path, so it's noticeable. And then, you know, whoa boy, feels stable enough. This is, you know, there could start to be that frame flex I was talking about earlier. I'm gonna try to show that. Kind of wiggles, you know, if you're standing up and you're really working this thing. But that's not what the bike's about. It's about, you know, comfort, standing over it easily, having some stability. I have noticed sometimes if you're going really fast and you've got a lot of weight on the back or some extra bags, it's nice to have easy steering, and it's, you know, it's lightweight up here, but there can be a little bit of speed wobble that develops. Yeah, I'm filming. I was doing that on purpose. Thank you so much. You having a good day?
The only nervous one out here.
No worries. I hope I didn't scare you. So sometimes, you know, because the front of the bike is a bit lighter than the rear, I've noticed you can get a bit of speed wobble. I was going to see if that happens on this bike here. Let's do the no hands again. Feeling pretty stable. Oh, look at that. Do you see that? That's the speed wobble. So this bike does have a little bit of that going on. I think it probably makes sense to hold the handlebars. You know, it's minor. It still feels pretty good. We're at like 10 to 15 miles per hour right there. But that's another one of the trade-offs of having the rear heavy battery pack. And then I'm gonna try to show the camera down there again. Notice when I stop pedaling, there's a little bit of a kind of a click almost in the motors. It's pretty noticeable when it stops. So it stops quickly, which is great. You want that responsiveness, because if a car comes out or something, you don't want to be fighting the motor, but it pushes forward a little bit on the pedals. So I'm just noticing, yeah, just a bit of a click or something. It's not quite as subtle as the performance line motors that I'm a little bit more used to. Hey guys, from down here you should be able to see and hear the motor a little bit better. It's probably going to be amplified because you're connected to the frame and you're really close. It's still one of the quieter Bosch systems that I've tried. The Active Line's probably the quietest, and then the Active Plus, you get a little bit of boost. Again, it offers 50 Newton meters of peak torque versus 45. Also, I noticed that even though you can pedal backwards, there is some resistance. You know, it's kind of turning the gears or something inside. but when I pedal forward, it's very smooth. Yeah, that doesn't feel like there's a lot of resistance going on. So let's just give that a try. We'll ride along, listen for the fenders when I go over bumps and stuff. It seems like the whole bike's pretty solid and quiet. Bike's feeling very capable. I was able to hit the max assisted speed of 20 miles per hour there. The frame flex and that jiggle, speed wobble, those are my two biggest complaints about this bike. And again, they don't really happen if you're sitting down and you're holding the bars. But if you're riding a little bit faster and you bring your body weight back and up and go with no hands, that's when I notice the front gets a little bit squirrely. Okay guys, from here you should be able to see that front handlebar. I'm gonna do the no hands thing and just, you know, look for that wobble thing I was talking about. I've seen this on, you know, a bunch of other bikes. It's not specific to this bike only, but it does tend to happen with the rear rack battery. Practice shifting gears here. The other thing about the Nexus 7 there is it's a little bit of a lower end. You know, there is like a Nexus 9, you know, roll-off hubs. There's a bunch of products out there, internally geared hubs on the market, and this one's it's a little bit more entry level. When you shift gears, it doesn't happen right away if you're pedaling. You kind of have to stop for a second. It's got a self-protection mechanism built in, so it doesn't actually shift until you've eased off. So if you're pedaling and you notice like, hey, I'm shifting gears, like it's not happening, what's going on? It's because the motor, you know, it's trying to protect itself. The motor is trying to push you and you're pedaling, and that Nexus hub, it's, you know, it's basically a self-protection thing. Bosch does have shift detection built into their motor system, so basically it's listening for any change in tension, and when it notices you're shifting, it's supposed to kind of ease off a little bit so it doesn't add extra force to that more sensitive part of the drivetrain of your bike. So I think that's about it, you guys. That's the Bulls Cruiser E. For all the specs, for pictures, comments and stuff, I'll see you back at the ElectricBikeReview.com website. Of course, chime in here if you have any questions or comments. I'll do my best to answer. Have fun out there. Ride safe.